welcome back to Word of Truth. So I'm struggling to know what the title of this video was going to be, but what I'm going to be talking about today is public exclusion. So where that term comes from, that actually comes from my book called The Process of Sonship. So this book is the first edition of this book. The Lord's had me writing a second edition over the past year or so. It's not out yet, but it will be out. I don't know when, but it will have a lot more information. So this book outlined the process of sonship, but the second edition just goes into more depth, and the Lord's had me lay more of a foundation, just explaining some things like kingship and priesthood in just more detail. This book is really for fivefold ministers and the process that God wants to take us through in order to make us into the sons of God that He wants us to be, that we can be not just abide alone, but basically be able to multiply just like the adult butterfly is able to do. So today I'm going to be talking about the public exclusion phase of our journey as part of the process, and that is really talking about the cocoon phase. So when we've fallen into the ground, you know, and die. So I'm going to go into more detail, but we're talking about this process here when we're concealed, when the Lord is concealing you. So, you know, there's been many sermons where we talk about these things, but this is literally a specific part of the process, and you're not in this concealing phase unless you've gone through all these other parts as well. So this message is specific. It's not for everybody. This message is specifically for those who have gone through this process so far and are in this phase here. And I'm going to really be talking about how does the grave prepare you for resurrection? How does the cocoon prepare you for the immersion that the Lord wants to do next? You know, so what is it that He's doing in this phase? What are we supposed to learn? How do we know that? You know, what is the Lord trying to do in us? So yeah, so the analogy of the butterfly one I'm going to refer to a lot. For if as Jesus as our main model, it's equivalent to Jesus being in the grave. You know, those 3 days when He's in the grave. So what is the Lord doing in us during that phase, before He resurrects us, before He takes us into the position that He destined for us, you know, from the beginning? What is He doing? So I'm just going to start by just sharing personal testimony that this year for me has been, I personally am in this phase, and so if you haven't read the book, you might not understand exactly where I'm coming from, so obviously I encourage you to get the book. It's on sale, the first edition is on sale, so you can grab it. If you start watching this video, say when there's no more copies of this first edition and the second edition hasn't come out yet, then you just wait. If the second edition is out, then you can just go to Purity, I'll put it down the bottom here, go to Purity Foundation our ministry website, and you'll be able to get a free copy, because they're going to be available free as an ebook for free. So this year for me has been, the word patience has been the word that the Lord has been teaching me, and it's not it's very significant that it has been, because basically God, the way that the Lord deals with me is that I have to go through stuff in order to be able to teach it. I can't just teach something that I don't know what I'm talking about. So specifically with the process of sonship, how did He begin to reveal it to me? Because He's taken me through the process myself. And so this year He's been using athletics as a way to teach me patience. So I'm an athlete. The Lord has, part of the ministry that the Lord's called me to do is to go into the athletics world, and I'm an athlete. So that's another story. So you can go to my blog if you want to find out more about that. But so He's been using athletics as a means to teach me patience this year. And you know, it's so funny because I understood that there's a process in terms of, there's a death process, like when you're going, you know, a seed falls into the ground. So basically that, imagine this is the ground and a seed goes into the ground. I understood there's a process for that seed to get there. I understand that there was a dying process. I got that. There was a process for Jesus to get to the cross. It's like I seem to understand that, but in my mind I didn't quite have this understanding that once that seed is in the ground, I didn't realize that there was, you know, a process between the seed going into the ground and the seed coming out of the ground. So I just didn't seem to have this concept. I just thought that, boom, things would just happen. The bringing forth process would just be immediate. It just didn't seem to click to me. And so this year the Lord has just been used in athletics, in the sense that it's been my first season back. So just like Moses, the Lord basically told me to, the way Moses had to leave Egypt, and he was in Midian for 40 years, and then the Lord sent him back. That's pretty much been my testimony with regards to athletics. And I used to be in athletics, you know, elite athlete, etc. The Lord told me to leave it behind. I left it behind for a few years, and now He sent me back. So with Him sending me back, I just thought, wow, you know, as soon as I go back, I'm going to be just amazing. It's going to be exactly where I left off, or just be like better, like straight away. Basically, what you've shown me is just going to happen like immediately. I wasn't prepared for him to actually have to be taking me. Basically, I wasn't prepared for step-by-step progress. And it sounds so ridiculous, but I wasn't. And so the Lord actually has just used this year to just really teach me this, and just to show me, you know, patience is a key part of, you know, the public exclusion. It's like, it's where we learn patience. Same way that Joseph was in prison, he couldn't come out of his own accord. He had to just wait for Pharaoh to have the dream. And so when you're in the grave, Jesus had to wait for the Father to resurrect him. He didn't resurrect himself. He had to just wait. And the key mark of a son, when you know that you're not, so there's one thing falling into the ground, but the scripture says, unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it abides alone. So until we die, so yes, you die, like you've gone to the cross and you're being buried, but until you die, in the sense of, so you've died in that you said, Lord, not my will but yours. Like, you've gone through that part of the process, but until you die, where you are okay with not knowing when the Lord's going to bring you out of the grave, you're okay with not knowing how he's going to do it, until all those kind of feelings, like, you're not in a place where you want your own will or you want something else. It's all about what God has, you know, what he has for you and what he said. But until you're in a place where you can relinquish the how, basically, and you've died, and patience becomes something that you love, then you're not ready. So, you know, the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, and what comes out of the butterfly, it's a complete transformation. You know, there's so many scriptures that I want to share, so I'm just gonna just begin with Romans 12 verse 1. So Romans 12 talks about transformation, and that's really what the cocoon phase is all about. It's a complete metamorphosis. What goes in is not what comes out. Yeah, and that's the same for us. So verse 2 I want to read. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So firstly, like the public exclusion, the cocoon phase, is really a place where the Lord is trying to transform us by the renewing of our mind. The exclusion phase is the last transformation that the Lord takes us through before we step into our predestined position. So for the butterfly, the cocoon is the last transformation that it goes through before it becomes a butterfly, which is its final state. You know, for Jesus, the grave was the last transformation that he went through before he resurrected, and he was in his final state and then ascended into heaven. For, you know, using an analogy of just of a human life, we are the exclusion phase will be equivalent to being a young man, and the next phase as a mature son. It's the final state you're going to be in. There's no more, the child is gone. For David, it was when he was in the caves, and that was the last place before the Lord put him into the office that he said, you know, he'd already predestined him as king. So that was the last, you know, his last phase, his last transformation phase before he stepped into his office as king. For Moses, it was while he was in exile in Midian. That was the last, you know, transformation process that he went through before he had to become the deliverer in Egypt. And for Paul, while he was teaching in Antioch, that was his exclusion phase before the Lord released him. You know, the Holy Ghost released him for ministry, and that was him beginning and stepping into the call that the Lord had said that he would step him into. And for Joseph, it was the pit. It was prison. You know, before he was stepped into his position as governor in the palace. So just as a quick little summary, so I say the last transformation because if we read the butterfly analogy again, you know, you start off as that egg, you know, and then you're emerging and you're a caterpillar. That's already one transformation, you know, from that egg to the caterpillar, and then the caterpillar has to grow. That's another, you know, you're another part of the process where we have to grow as a caterpillar. That's a transformation in itself. And then you're hanging upside down in that J shape, and then you go through that metamorphosis in the cocoon. So the cocoon is the last transformation, but it's still not the last part of your process. There's still more, obviously, but this is the Lord preparing you for that final state, preparing you to step into the position that he had told you that he's called you for. You know you're called. You know what your office is. You know what the Lord has said that you. Basically, it's the last page before you step into the promise. And the promise is not even the final phase. Joseph's promise to be governor, or his brothers to bow down to him, was not God's actually the ultimate. Jesus resurrecting was not the ultimate. It's still a transition into the bigger picture of what God is doing. So what does he do in this part of this concealing phase? So I just want to read what I shared before, which was John 12. And so for me, I understood that I could see the process up to this point in the grave, but not seeing that there is what he's trying to do in this. So John 12:24 says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." So I've spoken about this already, but just to read the scripture. So obviously, there's the process of falling into the ground. If you're at this part of the process, you've gone through that part of the process. So this is now and die. It's two part. You've fallen into the ground, so we know you're in the ground. This is the death. You need to die. But yes, we've gone through the death of the cross, just like Jesus did. But the dying we're talking about, that complete burial. There's no more that transformation where the metamorphosis takes place. That what goes in is not what comes out. What the body Jesus went in with was not the same. That's why I didn't even recognize him. So it was his body, but it was transformed. Okay, so this message is for those who fall into the ground, which I've said already. So what are the principles of maturity? So this is really that last phase of maturity, just like I said with regards to the using the analogy of a human life, and that this is that change from, young man. This is the last bit where you leave behind the young man, so to speak. This is where the Lord is trying to get rid of the young man and make you into a mature son. They get rid of the young man. The young man still has little traits of a child. He can look like a man, but when situations arise, you see, oh wow, there's still a bit of childishness there, and the Lord is trying to get rid of, all those last bits. And to be honest with you, that's why the patience is so key. We're going to read James 1, because this whole phase, patience is the word. If I was any word to use, patience is it. I think that's why I was really been banging on about it to me, and to really get me to understand. Patience is literally the key of this phase. James 1 verse 2, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptation, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Wanting nothing. That speaks of maturity. That speaks of there's no lack. That speaks of there's no want. A child wants, oh, I want, I need. And this really speaking about patience, let it have your perfect work. So what we're speaking about in this cocoon is a perfect work, a perfect transformation, a perfect maturing where you lack nothing. There's no childishness left in you. And patience can only, you just have to let it be worked out. You have to just endure it. And until you enjoy it, it says count it all joy. Until you can count it all joy in this phase, because you can't fake patience. Someone can wait, two people can wait, but it doesn't mean you're being patient. Patience is something that goes on the inside. It's that peace and that stillness that goes on the inside. So you can be waiting, doesn't mean that you're being patient. And it's patience that needs to have its perfect work in you. And that's what the Father's really trying to do. So I just want to go through some key points that Abba's really shown me that signify when we're coming. We know that for us to be able to identify, because at the end of the day, it's him that's going to say come out, but for us to be able to see for ourselves, like, am I actually getting to that place of being full term in this phase? Because if I'm still don't like patience, then it's like there's an issue. Lord, these are the things that I need to be able to see for myself. So this season is coming to an end, or when patience is beginning to have this perfect work in you, when you can release the house. This is one of the things I shared already. But let's read Isaiah 55. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain cometh down, and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that is that it may give seed to the sower and bread to the eater. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing wherein I sent it. We are the thing that the Lord has sent His word into, and He's taken us through the process up to this point. And so when we can relinquish how, and we realize, Abba, do you know what? Your way is higher than mine. Like, I actually don't know how you're going to do this thing. I don't know how I'm going to get from being in prison to being in the palace. I don't know how I'm going to get from being in a cocoon as some jelly smushed up substance to becoming a butterfly. I have no idea how you're going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to come from being a shepherd in Midian and I'm going to deliver thousands of people. How am I going to do that? I have no idea. You know, you could speculate until you can realize and say, do you know what? I 100% trust you that you're going to do it. I can't see it. It looked impossible, and I've calculated every single way that I thought you was going to do it. It's not been it. And now, do you know what? I'm fine with being here. I'm fine with staying here. I'm happy to stay here. You know, I don't need to know anymore. And literally being okay with it, literally trusting Him. It's really about that trust in Him. Jesus trusted the Father wholeheartedly. Like, Jesus was in hell. Like, He preached in hell. Do you know what I mean? It's like, He trusted the Father to resurrect Him on the third day, just like He promised. And so this all comes down to, do we believe God is going to do what He said He will do? He's taken us through this process up to now, which means that His voice, He's doing it. He's working it out. Do we trust Him that He's really going to do it? That's what this faith is really, that putting everything you've gone through, everything you've learned about the Father up to this point to the test. Do you believe Him? Because the thing is like, if you don't 100% trust, we'll just have to stay here. And if you can choose to try and come out yourself, but the Holy Ghost said that when you're in a cocoon, or if you haven't completed that complete transformation, you're not a caterpillar anymore and you're not a butterfly, but so you're useful for nothing. And the thing is that many ministers can come out at this phase when they're not 100% transformed, when patience has not had its perfect work in you. And that is what you want to stay. You want to stay because it has to be God that brings you out. You can, at this phase where you are, you've gone through enough. As a young man, you could do a lot of things, many things. You could pretty much do everything. That's the truth. As a young man, there's not really much things you can't do that a man could do or a father could do. But the issue is that when young men have children and they've still got a hint of childishness, what do they pass on to their children? You know, they're still impatient. They're still, you know, hostile and unforgiving. There's still those little hints of it. So yeah, they might not be as much as a little kid who's 5, but they still have those teenage tendencies. And that's what the Lord is trying to rid of, those those things that seem to be little, but it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. Okay, so, you know, 2, when you enjoy waiting, so when you can, to be able to you don't need to know how anymore. You trust God that He's going to do it. You don't know how, and you're okay with not knowing. That's one thing. Second thing is like enjoying the waiting, you know, because James talks about counting it all joy. One thing to be okay with it, okay, fine, but to enjoy it, to see God in the season that you're in, to realize that the patience is actually about knowing Him. I think that's the thing that blew my mind the most over the last month. Like, you know, you just go through this war of this struggle of like going through the patience, and you just go around, and then just coming out of that little, you know, that little kind of turmoil thing, that little battle with, you know, not trusting God sort of thing. And it's not in the same way that you wouldn't trust God when you're a baby. It's completely different. But yeah, it's not the same as when you were, you know, back when you were an egg. It's not like that. It's not those kind of not trusting God in a sense, because you know Him so much more at this point. But obviously the tests are greater, and so it's complete. This is now the real battle is, Lord, are you actually going to bring me into the purpose that you said? I've been obedient all the way into this place. You've taken me through this process, but the battle is the enemy just saying, you know, he's going to keep you here. Like, you're going to stay here. You're going to stay in the grave forever. But when you coming through that hump, I just really don't know. I have this overwhelming faith. I just know God's going to do it. I just know now. And it's been part of this exclusion. It's been part of this letting patience have its perfect work. And the revelation that it's actually been, the patience is about you come to know and completely trust the character of God. And that's the perfect work that patience is actually having in us, is to allow us to really trust the Father. to believe that he really is loved, to believe that he really will not fail us. And that is what, that's what the enemy always does. When he plants seeds of doubt, it's about attacking the character of God. And that's what this faith in particular is really about, coming to see the love of God in having to wait, in him delaying, in the patience, seeing the love of God. So let's just read a few scriptures. John 11, verse 1 to 6. So John 11, let me just read it very quickly. I mean, I don't really have to read it. You guys can read it for yourself. John 11, so obviously Jesus has heard that Lazarus has died. And it says, when Jesus heard, verse 4, when Jesus heard that, he said, the sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified thereby. Verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. But that was verse 6. So when Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he abode, meaning he delayed, he waited. And so it says he loved him. So because he loved him, he waited. And as a child, that doesn't make any sense to us. But when you know that the Lord is really doing patience is having its perfect work in you, and the Lord is really making you into a mature son, is when you actually see that. You see, wow, you see his love in him delaying. When you see his love in his that's what changes you. That's what literally you enjoy being in this place, because you see him, you see what he's doing, you see that it's going to bring him glory, you see that it's about him. Proverbs 25 verse 2, it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honour of kings is to search out a matter. And this scripture has seen a little bit of a different way, in that it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. When God conceals us, it's to his glory. Him concealing us is to his glory. And as kings in this phase, because this is where literally the Lord is developing in us and releasing to us our heavenly kingship, in this phase is for us to search out the matter, search him out, to search him out. So while the Lord is concealing us, our honor is to search him out, to search out this matter of this concealing and find him. That's our honor in this phase. So when you can see the beauty and delay, that's when you know the young man is gone and the mature man has arrived. So, or that the seed has died, ready to spring forth. It's only when you can see his love, when you really see it, because you can say all these things, but at the end of the day, it's only like fooling yourself. Like, I can say, oh, I'm being patient, but you know in your heart if you are loving the patience. You know in your heart if you see the beauty, like you really think this is beautiful, like where you're really like, I love this place because I've actually come to know him so in a way that I never would have. I love this place because he's here with me. That's a different story. You can't fake those kind of things. Let's read 1 Corinthians 13 verse 11, and it says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. You know, we've been going through this process, and this part of the process is really where, you know, the final putting away of childish things. There's no more time for childish things. This is that final. We've been putting away childish things step by step by step by step. The Lord takes us, you know, even as it's going through a process, it's a process of putting away childish things. But this final, this transition phase, it's not a transition, but this metamorphosis in this phase is that final putting away of childish things. You know, a child only thinks now and me. So when we are impatient and we want to know, how are you going to do it, Lord? Are you really going to bring me out of here? Are you really going to bring me to purpose? What about the purpose? What about the promise you've given to me? The promise for my calling. When we still have that mentality, it's still the child is all about now, and we can see, why is it not now? Why am I still here? But a mature son sees long term. Like Jesus, you know, you see, you're not anxious. You're not anxious, not the right word, but you're not impatient for being here. You count it joy to be waiting. You count it joy to still be hidden. You count it joy to still be in prison, even though the Lord told you your brothers are going to bow down to you. But you count it joy being in this place because you realize, you see the longer term picture. This is not about me. This is about me not abiding alone, because, you know, you step into position, it's God fulfilling his promise. in your life, but it's not for that reason. It's so that you can multiply. The adult butterfly has gone through the whole cycle, not to just be an adult butterfly. Look at me. It's so that he can multiply. And when Jesus realized that I'm in this grave, but it's not even about me resurrecting. It's about me when I ascend and I'm able to multiply. That is the point of the grave. That is the point of what he's trying to, that's what Abba's trying to do in us, in this concealing, because it's a concealing in that, yes, you're still ministering. Jesus was ministering in the grave, you know, Joseph was ministering in prison, Paul ministered in Antioch before he was released. But you're still ministering, but it's on a smaller scale. This is not what you promised me, Lord. This is not the destination you said for me. Yeah, but it's realizing that this being okay, enjoying, not just okay, but enjoying and seeing the honor of the Father, like seeing you seeking out the Father in this place of concealing, because you understand, you know, you're no longer thinking as a child, you're now thinking as a mature son. So Mark 4:28, this is the revelation that we have to get in the grave. As you know, this is the transformation the Lord is trying to get in our mind, because this is how the next phase was actually going to be. The next phase, or the next transition, is a transition, meaning that it's step by step. The emerging is not, the butterfly doesn't just go, it's in the cocoon and just go boom. Like, it's a slow and delicate process of God actually putting you into that promise, you know, of God actually. Joseph became prime minister, right? And it was not the next day that his brothers bowed down to him. It was about 9 years, you know. So it's like, the point is that even in God setting you in, Moses delivering the people from the Israelites from Egypt was not one day. He was even like, Lord, why is this thing taking so long? Why is Pharaoh saying no? Didn't you say you're gonna deliver the people through me? And so, only if you don't get the revelation in the cocoon, or in the grave, or in this exclusion, if you don't get this revelation, which I'm going to read from Mark, then you're not ready to come out, because you have, a son loves patience, a son loves waiting on God, a son loves it, and the whole process, that's what has been the thing that's been the struggle of life, is waiting on God. And waiting on God is where we die. It's all about being about dying, but it's when you get the renewed mind of, I love waiting on God, that's when you know that the child has gone. So Mark 4:28 says, for the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. It's a step by step. That growth of the seed from the ground, when it's coming out, it doesn't come out of the ground and boom, it's a tree, which is the way I was thinking. My childish mentality was still there. So I just didn't have this revelation. I just have so many revelations as a young man, have so many revelations in terms of understanding the way God works, not revelations of things that just, who cares, but revelations concerning sonship in terms of how God works with us, but just not seeming to just have this, it just didn't click that a seed doesn't spring up and boom, it's a tree. Like, it's a little by little, step by step. And that's what the scripture's saying. You know, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. And if we don't get this revelation when we're in the grave, then the next, what is the point of the Lord taking you into the next phase? Because you're just going to opt out. Because even the Lord putting you into the position he promised for you is a step by step by step by step. You have to get this revelation in. This is what the Lord is trying to renew your mind here. To understand and love how God works. This is how God works. And this is the part where we love it. Where we get rid of, put away all the childish thinking concerning the way that we think things should be done. Now. Why is it not happening now? Instant, now. And loving the way God works. How he is so thorough and does things step by step, because he cares about us. He works with us step by step, and just with humanity of people, he works with us in that way because he's delicate. He's thorough and he's delicate. That's why. And so when we can see that, that's when, you know, the mature son is really what's rising up in you, and it's no longer the young man. So yeah, the mature son understands this principle and trusts God, appreciates the long-term plan of God for the good of many and not just themselves. They don't care if it takes long. So that's what the Lord is trying to cultivate in us, allowing patience to perfect in us now, so we want for nothing in the fact, and understanding that who cares how long it takes? because you see the beauty of what's God's going to do. The fruit that's going to produce outweighs the length of time. Who cares how long? The Lord is long suffering. That's love. Yeah. So there's no rush. Mature sons, there's no rush. So when that rush, that little, that thing that inside of you that wants to rush, that wants things to be now, when that feeling has gone, that's when you know that you're no longer, the childish part has gone. A mature son is moved by faith. They're not moved by anything else. Yeah, let's read Romans 8:14. Romans 8:14 says, "For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they're the sons of God." Sons of God are led by the Spirit. They're not led by anything else. They walk by faith. So it's all about Him. And much fruit is what glorifies the Father. We know that from John 15. It's much fruit that glorifies the Father. And so, you've been going through this process, so the fact that you even got to Him means that you wanted the Father, like you've gone through step-by-step obedience. But the point is that this is not the end. So you can stay in the grave. You can try to emerge, and actually you've emerged of your own self, and you end up destroying what God's trying to do because you haven't gone through the complete, let patience have its complete work. It's not finished. And so if you emerge at that point, you're actually useless. Like, you're not useful to the Lord anymore. And that's the thing. It's like, the choice is, once you're in this part, once you're in the public exclusion, you're not a caterpillar and you're not a butterfly. So the choice you have is either you stay in this cocoon forever, or you stay and allow the Lord to bring you out when He's ready. Because if you come out when it's not God, you're not going to be, it's not going to bring glory to God. That's literally just how it goes. It's like, if you're still a child, what you do out of this place is actually not, if you still have childish tendencies, what you do out of this place is not actually going to bring Him glory. So if you want to bring Him glory, the only option is to just allow patience to have its perfect work in you. So much fruit is what glorifies the Father, but Jesus tells us this. That's the thing. And so a mature son realizes it, and they understand that much fruit is not produced overnight. So in us, but in God's plan. And so recognizing and loving how God does things step by step. And so that's why you love patience. That's why you don't mind how long things take, because it's all worth it. It's all worth it. So the dangers, which I've already spoken about, but just to clarify, the dangers of this phase is that, like I said, a caterpillar crawls and a butterfly flies. They're two different creatures altogether. They're not the same. And so this cocoon is where that transformation takes place. And so, yeah, there's just no middle phase. So coming out as a young man, you're not a mature son. And so the only option is to allow God to do what He wants to do. Because you can fool everybody else. Like a young man can look like a mature man. He can look like a mature man, like a teenager. I'm trying to rule. You're saying young man, like you're not a teenager anymore, but you're still not grown. Like you're wearing out of them kiddie tendencies, but you're not quite mature. Like anything could rise in your life, you can still you basically lack. So the word the Lord gave me was that you lack the experience of Him, and the experience of Him is obviously you've gone through an experience up to this point, but the experience of Him in that of love. That was the word that I haven't mentioned, fear. Until all fear is gone, perfect love casts out all fear. So that rushing feeling is a childish tendency where you haven't been experienced in the love of God. So Romans 5 says from verse 3, "And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us." Okay, so patience experience. So patience works experience. It's in the patience that we come to experience the love of God. We experience that the Lord is not going to put us to shame. We hope and we know God is not going to put us to shame. There's no more. This is the experience, the patience, the experience, the hope. That's where we come to know the love of God. So we get full. So when I'm giving an analogy of a young man, think of a glass and think of maybe a glass that's 3/4 full. 3/4 full is not full. If there's space, there's still space for fear. There's still space for doubt, or that fear that the Lord is going to leave me and put me to shame. But when you allow patience to have its perfect work, that glass gets filled up to the top, and you basically know, because the Holy God is shed. She's talking about shed abroad, is like pouring out. He's poured out and he's filled up with the love of God, and there's no more space for fear. There's no more space for fear. So the point of saying that, there's no middle ground. So you can't fulfill the call of God on your life from this place. It's either you let the perfect work happen, so you take the complete transformation, because you can come out of this place as a young man, as a 3/4 full glass, and do the work, do the job, or the physicalness of it. But the physicalness of, the power is never in the physicalness of it anyway. You know, the power was always in, everything Moses was able to do was because of God. It was not because of him. So he could go and put a staff in the water. What sea was going to part? You know, so he could do stuff, or go there and maybe fight Pharaoh to make, try and do things in your own strength. But that's not the point. So this phase is really about the Lord maturing in us and basically letting love be perfected in us. And so a lack of love is a lack of fruit. So really what we're talking about is the first thing that the scripture tells us about love. So remember, God is love. So everything, like I said, this whole faith is about knowing God, knowing love, and allowing love to have its perfect work in us. Basically is what it's saying, coming to know and experience love and understand and be full of him, and there's no more fear. And so the first thing to tell about love is that love is long suffering or patient. So if we lack patience, if we're still puffed up, or we're easily provoked, or we're seeking our own way, or we're boastful or prideful or dishonor others, or irritable or resentful, which are not things that might necessarily seem, not something that you immediately look at. If you're going back to, when you were a baby, those are not the things that you might, there was not the obvious, or let's say the immediate sins that everyone looks at, but these are signifying a lack of love, a lack of maturity. You're still puffed up, you're still easily provoked, you're still irritable, you're still impatient. Impatient signifies the childish tendency. The lack of love is a lack of maturity. And so that's what the Lord is trying to do in us now. So love is patient. And if we even think about how many leaders do we see that are impatient, or puffed up, or easily provoked, or seeking their own way, or boastful, or prideful, or dishonor others, or irritable, or resentful. And these are the things the Lord is trying to, these are all things that are not always necessarily an action thing straight away, but in your heart if you're irritated, in your heart if you're impatient, if you're in your heart if you're prideful. You don't always have to say something to be prideful. You don't have to always, it's not always something you've said, it's what you don't say as well. And so these are what the Lord is trying to do, because even the feeling of I should be out of this place by now, that's prideful. These are all things obviously the Lord spoke to me about from a personal level. So wow, that's pride. Why do I feel like I shouldn't be here? Or why am I still working for other people? I should be, look how many gifts you've given me, I should be able to do all these things by now. How come you've still got me here? And it's says who? Why do I feel myself, why do I see myself more highly than I ought to? If this is where the Lord has me, then this is where I should be. So this is what he's trying to do in us, and I really pray that you're receiving it. This is what he's trying to do in the exclusion phase of us. That the exclusional grave prepares you for resurrection or election, because it perfects you in love. This phase is all about being perfected in love. That's why it's not fancy and glittery. That's why it's just a lot of waiting, a lot of those internal stuff. It's all the stuff that's going on the inside that people don't care about, but the Lord cares about, because it's fruit that brings him glory. It's fruit that brings him glory. So a mature son, what we want to see when we emerge, and what emerges can only be what's done in here. So what's going to emerge has to be a mature son with no fear that he won't do it, no fear that you'll be stuck in this place forever, no fear of what others will think, no fear of looking like a fool, no fear of being too old or too weak, no fear of the unknown, no fear of being unskilled, no fear, only trust in him. And that's what he's doing in this phase. Like, when we come to see him as love, see him in this long suffering, in this patience, when we see him and we're filled with him and completely experience him and completely trust in him, that's when a son can emerge. Because can you imagine someone who operates like that? Yeah, that's what he's trying to do, guys. We have to allow him to have his perfect work. So if we still feel those hints of irritation, those hints of, I've noticed that even like caring what people think will not hinder me from doing anything anymore. But I shouldn't have a feeling. I know that. I know Abba wants me to not have any of the feeling. And so I will stay here until I don't even have those feelings, because it says, Daniel says that those who know their God will do great exploits. And that is what he's trying to do with us, guys. How are we going to equip the saints for the work of the ministry when you're not even the tools he needs to use to equip the saints? So that's what he's trying to do. We haven't seen it because this is what it takes. Jesus was the perfect example. There was no fear. There was no doubt. There was no... Didn't care. Don't care what people... Like, for Jesus to say stuff like, you brood of vipers, I was thinking like, wow, Jesus did not care. Like, he doesn't care what you think. He trusts God fully. He sees the plan of God. He sees the beauty of the multiplication. He sees the fruit. And so let patience have its perfect work in us. So, a young man may be obedient but fearful. May be obedient but impatient. So I'm trying to just show the difference between a young man and a mature son, is that up to this point, you've got to this point because you've been obedient. So you can be obedient and fearful. That's the truth. You can be obedient and impatient. So, I'm saying all these things to myself. Nothing I'm saying is like, oh, I haven't done it. Oh, you think you're so great. No. I've been obedient up to this point. Have I been fearful at times? Yeah. Have I been impatient? Yeah, because I've been telling you most of this year I've been impatient. So I can be obedient and impatient. I can be irritated and obedient. You can say, and do what God's telling you to do. And yes, there's blessings in that. But to come out and emerge as what Abba wants to do, we have to even not have those feelings. That's what you're trying to do. Those feelings can't even be there. So if fear or impatience continually lead, he will end up in disobedience and remain a young man. So we've got to this place because of obedience, but impatience, and if we allow fear and impatience to lead us, we've got up to this point, but because we continue to be obedient. So continually be in obedience. Even if we continue to be obedient, we will continue to be obedient in this place means that you will stay. But if you allow, so even though you've been obedient up to now, if you now choose, I'm going to let fear rule, I'm going to let impatience rule, then you will quit the process. But the point is that you have to continue to be obedient. It's not, oh, I was obedient, in my enrollment and in my education and in my exposure, and now I've been obedient all the other times, so it should count now. It's like, no, you have to continue to be obedient. But if you now let, regardless of what you've done up to now, which is obviously be obedient, if you choose now to let fear and impatience rule you, then you will stay a young man and you will quit this process. So the point is that we have to continue to be obedient despite, and only when we continue in obedience will patience be able to have its perfect work in us. So that's what I have to share for this video today. So my encouragement for you is, you've allowed Abba to do what he's done up to now. He's brought you to this point, which should show you that he is doing it. Like, if the very script, like this, it amazed me. Obviously, I had the privilege of, I guess, getting this firsthand of Abba revealing it to me and seeing it in my life. Like, it was just amazing to me. Like, when Abba would show me the pattern in scripture, I'm looking at scripture, I'm like, I know what's going to happen next in my life. And it literally, the same thing I'm going through. I'm like, how is this? Like, wow, Lord. And, you, at the beginning, but then you go through so much, you're just like, you go round the battles. Oh, is Abba going to leave me here? Is he going to leave me here? Is he going to leave me here? But there's no more time for that. Literally, we have to know Abba's going to bring you out. He's going to do what he said. Trust him. He is faithful. He is faithful. Let patience have its perfect work in you. Abba will do his part. He will do everything. Our part is to remain obedient despite everything, to trust his character, to let love fill us. Let love fill us, because it's those who know their God Yeah, it's those who know their God. What is it? Daniel. Let me just find that and read that to finish. Oh, Lord, thank you so much. Guys, I really, really pray that you're receiving this anointing to endure, this anointing to remain patient, and just receive these words. You know, I may not be the most flamboyant teacher, I might stutter at times, but I just really pray that you can see past those things and just really receive the message that the Lord is actually releasing in this video. This is my first time actually really sharing these things, and you know, fear tried to cripple me as well. You know, I've had to stop this video a few times through in order to and you probably heard noise in the background and stuff, but it's literally been a battle to film this video. So I really believe Abba wants me to record this video. And it says, Daniel 11 verse 32, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. The people that do know intimately, experience, the love of God has filled you, yeah, has completed you. You lack nothing. You lack nothing. You are the ones who will be strong and do great exploits. Be patient, guys. Allow patience to have it perfect work in you. And I look forward to seeing the sons of God arising. I really pray this video has blessed you, and I'll see you next time on Word of Truth. Bye, guys.